first. I'm very excited to hear what he has to say. One of my hats is as a realtor, and we're seeing the market change and pick up tremendously. And a lot of that has to do with inventory. There's not that many houses for sale, so it's the market's beginning to flip. So I'll let him give all the statistics and everything on that, but just from what I'm seeing, I'm pretty excited that people's values may be coming back. It may take a while, but we'll get there. So we have Alvin Lankford today, who is Williamson County Chief Appraiser. Mr. Lankford has been with the Williamson County Appraisal District since 2000 and is a registered professional appraiser. His professional affiliations include the Board of Tax Professional Examiners, the Texas Association of Appraisal Districts, the Texas Association of Assessing Officers, and the International Association of Assessing Officers. So we will welcome Mr. Lankford.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Can everybody hear me? I find it kind of ironic that they mic'd me up for this and everybody else wasn't, but my staff would really find that ironic considering they tell me I talk too much and too loud. So, want to admit something this morning, and many of you may admit the same problem. I realize that I'm an addict. Sleep is my drug, the bed is my dealer, the alarm clock is the police, but I realized something this morning. Coffee is my bail bondsman company. So I'm awake now. I think I'm ready to speak to you guys, and I want to tell you that I appreciate you inviting me out again. I think we're trying to figure out the third year in a row that I've done this. I want to say it's the fourth. It feels like it's the fourth. I remember coming out as a deputy chief appraiser. First, I think you guys were the first presentation I ever made in my role as deputy chief. So I appreciate y'all inviting me out again. This year, I've got some good news for you, some not so good news, a little bit of both. There is, as was previously mentioned, there's some good things happening in the market. I'm going to get into that. I think there's some positive sales growth going on. There's more lots being built, or excuse me, being developed, and I want to get into some of that information. I also want to tell you this morning about what's happening at our office. So those of you who come and visit us during this time of year, we send out invitations to everybody in the county to do so if you'd like. When you do come and visit us, we've got some new things that you might see at our office that may interest you and hopefully will help with our efficiency and our customer service. So without further ado, let me get into the slide presentation here. Wanted to start out by saying basically what we're charging you as a community. As you may know, the taxing units themselves are who pay our budget. Okay, they pay it based on a percentage of the overall tax levy for the county. So, for instance, the county itself has 21% of the overall tax levy paid to the county, and they have about 21% of our budget. Round Rock ISD has about 21 to 22% as well. They pay about that much of our budget. So, the way it's broken up, budget history shows you 2009 to what's happened over the past few years. And as you can see in the graphic down below, you may not be able to see the numbers at the back of the room, but in the graphic down below, we're back to about 2009 levels as far as our budget is concerned. We recognize that a lot of the schools, a lot of the cities have been cutting their budget over the past few years. We wanted to recognize that in our budget since they are actually paying us and do the same thing. So we are back very close to 2009 levels. What we have done also is we've actually cut back on staff somewhat. We have, I think when I first started, we had 64 staff members. We're down to about 59 staff members. We've done that in response to exactly what all the other entities are going through as well. This is basically how the budget is broken up amongst our taxing units. This tells you, if you'll look on the right on the green, that's 58% of our budget is paid by the schools. They have the highest tax rate, therefore the highest tax levy, and therefore paying the most of our budget. The county is represented here in blue, and the cities are represented in red. So cities have about 13% of our budget. How do we compare to other appraisal districts? This here is basically one of the metrics we use to compare against each other as appraisal districts, and that is the cost, basically our budget, divided by the number of real parcels. That would be land parcels and approved parcels throughout the county. The first line you see here is what we are as far as price per real parcel. That's $39 a parcel. So we are well below Harris, Denton, and Jefferson. It drops off to $39 a parcel for us. But one of the things that we have that you see over here that none of these other CADs have is we have a new building. Thank you very much, by the way. We've been graced with a new building back in 2005. It served us very well, serves the public very well. We were in a building in downtown Georgetown that literally didn't have enough parking for the employees, much less people coming in. Any of those of you that may have visited us at that time, you might recognize that. It had seen its better day. It was an automotive shop before we occupied it. Some of the floors actually slanted in some of the offices. You had to turn your desk around to keep your doors from opening. I mean, that's how old the building was. So we've been graced with a new building, and if you take just that mortgage amount out of the budget and what we're paying for our mortgage, it actually drops us almost to the middle of our contemporary CADs. These are all Metro CADs is what we call them, and basically that means they have 100,000 parcels or more. So without that building mortgage, we're very comparable to the other CADs that are out there. But I am thankful to be in the building we are when when we have customers in. We have plenty of parking, we have plenty of space for everybody to come in. So it has been very helpful to us. What are you getting for that money? Williamson Central Appraisal District is audited, as other appraisal districts, once every other year with a property value study. That property value study actually takes a look at the way our appraisals compare to sale prices, as well as other appraisals done by the State Comptroller's Office. The Comptroller's Office sends out a reviewer that look at all this information and try to figure out if we are accurate as far as the market is concerned. They look at first the appraisal to sale ratio, basically means how close we are to 100% appraisal to sale ratio, which is what we're required to be at on January 1. And the other thing they look at is our COD. And to put this in layman's terms, basically it means most of the property's valuations that we put are grouped around that median. So the lower the COD, the more accurate the appraisal roll is. You don't want your appraisals to be, some of them at 25 cents on the dollar and some of them at $1.75 on the dollar. You want them to be grouped around the middle. And so that tells you how accurate the roll is as a whole. And we're proud to say that we're tied for first on that out of our contemporary appraisal districts. We have a 6.64 COD, which is the only other appraisal district that's close to that is Denton. And so we have a very accurate appraisal roll. I owe that to our staff. We have a very talented staff that spend a lot of time analyzing the market and trying to get accurate valuations for you, so everybody pays a fair share of their taxes based on market value. The other thing the Comptroller's Office does, the property value study is done once every other year. Well, in that odd year, the other year that we're speaking of, they have started a methods and assistance program. What this does is it compares us against what the state tax code says. Okay, are we following the laws that are out there? Are we following uniform standards of professional appraisal practice? Basically, the kind of the rules that are set up for all appraisers. Are we following the international standards for the IAAO, which is our International Association of Assessing Officers? They look at a lot of the standard practices and rules that are out there, and then they grade the appraisal districts throughout the state on this. This is a new program. Our goal for our first year of doing this was to attain the highest score in the state, and I'm proud to say we did it. We actually have got the best score that you can get on the Methods and Assistance Program. As you can see, this is just like the front page of the report card, if you will. It's out on our website if you wanted to see more. But this right here says that we've exceeded in every category. To exceed, you have to have a score that exceeds 100%. So that means we got every one that they required us to answer as a yes, and then we got all of our bonus questions as well. And so we've actually done very well. I'm very proud of our staff for both these two slides that I just showed you, and the fact that the Comptroller's Office has come in and reaffirmed that we're both appraising at market value, we're accurate in those appraisals. Not only that, we're following the code and the procedures and methods that are set forth by our international associations. New for 2012. How many of y'all have visited our website? I know a few of you have. Okay. Have you seen the new one? All right, we just started a new website this year. Actually started, I think, the April 4th, I think was the day it came out. With the new website, we wanted to make this more user-friendly. Those of you who were on the old one, it was a little antiquated. It was written on some software basically from the late 90s. We had a guy in our office that kind of knew how to work with that, and we created a website based on that. Well, we hired a consultant to come in and help us with our website to make it a little bit more user-friendly. We also wanted it to be user-friendly for our internal users at the office. When one of our departments needs to make a change to make information accurate on the website, they can make it now within that department without having to go through a programmer or anything to get that done. They can actually make the change on the website themselves. So it's been very handy for that. I want to point out a few things on the website that have changed. These two items here, the property owner portal and the taxing unit portal. The property owner portal is basically if you want to know about your property, your neighbor's property, or any property within the county, this is where you need to click. There's going to be a lot of information that's contained in that area just for you. You can also go up here to the property search. It's hard to see, I know, but there's a menu on the top, so there's other areas you can get into this. But we wanted to put that dead center of the website. It's the first thing you see when you're looking at it. That's where you need to go to get your information. The other item we want to point out is the taxing entity portal. Those of you who are interested in what the different taxing units are doing as far as valuations are concerned, City of Hutto, Hutto ISD, you can go in there and actually get information to the values that we've placed on properties each year. Not only that, you can follow that information along throughout the summer as we're dealing with protests to see what the values have dropped off to in relation to protest. And the entities are able to attain that information all throughout the summer and actually look at that for their budget process that they begin in the fall. So there's no surprises when it comes to certification. When I certify the roll and I put a value out there for them to use for their tax rates, they're able to know that ahead of time by looking in this. I had a question right here, Paul.
It occurred to me, what information do you have to identify a property to access it on this website?
You can access it by the owner name, address, the record number that we assign to it, and combinations thereof. I mean, you can even do a range of addresses. There's several ways of doing it. We're actually looking into a new mapping program that will help you on the map too. I'm hoping to get that approved at our next board meeting, that will allow you to pull up the map. Let's say you pull up your property and you want to know the valuations of everything on your street. You can actually just run a line down your street and select everything within a 50-foot radius of that line, or on either side of that line, and it'll pull up all the information for you in a grid. And so it'll be very handy if you just want to know what's happening in your area. Also handy for cities to use if you wanted to know, okay, we're going to put a fire hydrant in this area. What's within a 500-foot radius of this fire hydrant? You click on it and it'll give you all the properties that are within that area. So we're hoping to add that. That'll be another selection tool you'll be able to use to find out information about the properties that are out there. Last thing I want to point out on here is down here in the bottom left-hand corner. I mentioned this at some of the other meetings I've been here with you guys, is that we have videos out on our website. We were actually the first appraisal district in the state, I'm proud to say, that put videos out there that are basically explaining how the process works. As an appraiser, when I'm sitting there and talking to people about their valuation, it was more of an education process that we went through, trying to educate them, okay, this is how we initially valued it, here's the comparable sales we're going to use, what kind of information they could bring in. All of those items were discussed with that property owner. These videos go through that before you ever get into the office. That process of coming in to a lot of people is very intimidating. They didn't know what to expect when they got in there. They're intimidated by the process. If they go to the appraisal review board, even more intimidated by going in front of a panel of people. These videos will walk you through step by step from the time you check into the office, going back to see an appraiser, what that's going to look like, going to the appraisal review board, what that's going to look like, what kind of information you need. It walks you through the whole process. It should take that intimidation away. It shouldn't be an intimidating process to talk about your value. You should be able to know what to expect when you get there, and that's what these videos were about. We have the whole process on residential appraisal. So what we do when we go in the field and measure a home, what we do when we're valuing them initially, and then what is done in the appeal process. So all that is out there. Also, if you have ag, we have how to fill out an ag exemption video on there, homestead exemption videos. There's 8 total that are in there. How appraisal districts fit into the property tax system within the state. We have one on there. So pretty interesting. We kept them to about 10 minutes. We don't want to bore you to death. I mean, it is appraisal district information, so I can't tell you it's exciting. It's exciting to appraisal nerds like myself, but everybody else probably be bored after about 5 minutes in these videos. But they're out there if you would like to look at them. Next thing I wanted to point out is Pictometry. Pictometry is a company that we hired to do our aerial photographs in Williamson County. We actually hired them to do this. We're on a 6-year contract, and they fly aerial photographs between the December and January time frame every year. And they deliver those to us usually in the February to March time frame. These aerial photographs are actually available to our taxing units. The county has already taken advantage of them. I know some of our ESDs, Scott Kerwood, I don't know if he's left yet, but he has them as well. I believe the city of Hutto has them. What these aerials allow you to do is they allow you to look straight down on an image, as you can see here. This is a home that's just straight down from the airplane. And the other thing they have is oblique imagery, and that is from an angle. And we have angled photography on all of our county from the north, east, west, and south. And so you can actually see all sides of a structure. And so our entities are able to use these for a lot of things. If they want to know, the measurements across the front of a school building that they're going to have to paint, or maybe they want to know the measurements of the roof of the building if they need to re-roof it, they can use that for it. Police chiefs have used it for if you have a situation, there's a crime taking place, somebody with a gun or whatever, you can actually measure out a radius on there and see exactly where you need to evacuate people from. We've seen multiple uses of these images, so I encourage you, if you haven't seen them, to take a look at those, as far as those of you who are with the city or with the taxing units, to take a look at them and see what other uses you may be able to find out for them. This is an efficiency tool we've started in our field work process. When I started the Appraisal District, everything was clipboard, paper, and pencil. I mean, that's what you did. And, well, we had maps, but they were paper maps, and so if I needed to go out and look at 20 properties that day, I had to go out and highlight them on the map and use map pencils. It was almost like coloring again as a kindergartner, going out there and trying to figure out what I needed to do. And then when we got to the property, we had an appraisal card. We had to change everything with the pencil, and then that gets turned in back at the office, and somebody has to then take that information, interpret my handwriting, which can kind of be difficult sometimes, and then put that into the system. Well, now we started using devices. I mean, technology has evolved over the past few years tremendously. We've started using iPads and tablet PCs in the field. What this has enabled us to do is, instead of using those pencils and highlighters and maps and everything that we were using before, is we actually load the information of all the properties we want to see into this device. And those of you who have a smartphone know that there's a little blue dot that follows you around everywhere you go, right? I mean, you know exactly where you're at. So you can see all the dots that are on here are the properties that you need to go to that day. You look at your blue dot of where you're at, you know you're in front of that property. You click on the blue dot, or click on the dot that's related to that property, and it brings up an entry grid. You make the changes you need to on that property, hit done, it changes the color of that, you know you've been to it, don't have to go back out to it, and then that information is uploaded directly into our system when we get back to the office. So it's really shortcutted. No data entry is needed off of that. It's, there's no mapping work that needs to be done as far as trying to go find all this. It's really shortcutted a lot of the time spent on our field work, and we've actually been able to save a lot of time this past year, been able to visit more properties than we have in the past and use less labor to do so. So it's been a benefit to us for sure. Online protests. We started this last year. Last year we sent out 72,000 notices with the ability to protest online. This year we sent out 75,000 notices, still trying to increase this. These are sent out to residential homes that are generally in a tract home neighborhood. So what I mean by that is they're very comparable. There's a lot of sales within the area, and they're identified by two things on the notice. Up here there'll be an online protest ID, and then we put a watermark across the front of the notice that says online protest available. Real easy to see when you get your notice. What this enables you to do is, instead of taking your time out of your busy schedule to come into our office and protest your property and get comparable sales, this allows you to do it on our website. You enter your little code that's at the top there and file your protest, and usually within a day to 3 days we will send you back an email that will contain comparable sales information. Comparable sales we used on the valuation of your home. It'll also contain equal and uniform information. So if you're upset at the value, you say your neighbors are valued less than you are, it'll actually give you the comparable appraisals out there in your neighborhood as well. So all from the comfort of your home. You never have to even come in if you don't want to. You can do it at midnight if your schedule is different than what ours is. So this has been a really benefit to us. The stats for 2011, we had 72,000 notices that were sent out that were eligible. We had approximately 15,000 protests last year total. Of those 15,000 protests, about 7,800 of them were actually available to protest online. They were these tract home, homogeneous type neighborhoods. And then about 3,450, 7,860 was the ones that were residential properties. 3,450 were online protestable. And of those 3,450, we had 1,300 that actually used the online. That's a huge savings for us as well, because when they're coming in, those of you who run an office where you have customers that are coming in, it takes time out of the schedule to deal with that customer and have them sit down, and also takes their time to come in. And so it's actually shortcutted that process by giving them the information while they're at home. And if they still want to come in, they haven't given up that ability. They can still come in and talk to somebody. But if we were able to utilize the website, utilize that technology that's kept them from having to do that, kept us from having to deal with them when they come in. But if they still want to, we're able to do so. About 38% of those that were out there utilize this process. So it's been a real benefit to us, saved us some time as well. If you come into the office, this is the new technology you'll see we're using as well. The process as it was, you would come into the office and you would actually check in with the front counter personnel. And then they would hand you your paperwork and you would sit and wait on an appraisal. Well, the appraisers in the back would not know you were out there until somebody called. And so we had somebody stationed there to call up the appraisers. Hey, we've got a residential property owner, we've got a commercial property owner. So it took a while to get people to come up, our appraisers to come up. Well, what we were able to do with this new technology, it's called the queue or the check-in process. When they sit down at the front counter, they're entered into a queuing system. Basically, it's a line, and it's a digital screen in the lobby, and it tells you what line you're in. So if you're in a line to go see a residential property or commercial property or land, etc., your name will show up on that screen, and it shows up in order of appearance. So when you arrived at the office and were checked into it, it'll put your time on there. So if you were at 2 o'clock when you arrived at the office, it'll put that time on there. It has the current time up in the upper right-hand corner, so you know how long you've been waiting. And your name, as people are called, moves along in that line to the left. And when you get the far left in a blue box, you know that you're the next to be called. This has really taken some disgruntled customers out of the mix. And the reason that is because if you're a commercial property owner, we had 3 appraisers that we can handle commercial property. Well, if you saw 3 residential property owners come and go in front of you that came after you in line, we have 8 residential property appraisers that can handle that. And so it was really causing some confusion. I mean, you've had people line to jump you, right? Skip in line in front of you, and you're like, what happened? Well, that's what was happening before. This enables us to identify the fact that what line you're in enables the property owner to identify what line they're in and how long they've been waiting. The other thing it does is it tells the appraisers on their screen in front of them how many people are in the lobby, and if it's a property owner that they need to go see, so they know immediately. They come up and they check the appraiser out. We have an iPad mounted on the wall, as you can see here. Or they check the property owner out. They'll say, Mr. Grau, and they check him into themselves. It's tracked the wait time in the lobby. It's tracked the time that's spent with the appraiser, which has really been handy as far as understanding the process for us on how much time is spent at each step, so we can, hopefully make it more efficient as well. These stats here are based on the Q stats from last year. This is a partial year. But as you can see, for residential properties, we saw 2,300. We had an average lobby wait time of 8.5 minutes. That's pretty quick. I mean, they got in, they got checked in, and they were back to see an appraiser within 8.5 minutes. That's average. There were some that were longer, obviously some that were shorter. And then over here is our appraisers, and this tells you the time that they spent as far as the informal hearing length time with the property owner. So if you'll notice, I mean, the average is somewhere around 16 minutes with the property owner. So adding those 2 numbers together, you're under 25 minutes. I'd be willing to say that the total transaction time of coming into the office and being able to leave was within 30 minutes for most residential property owners. So we're really trying to be efficient with handling them as they come in, because we see quite a few of them. So within 30 minutes, we should be able to see you and give you the comparable sales, discuss it with you, and you're on your way. But what happens with efficiency often is that you start losing customer service. The more efficient you are, it seems like you don't take the time to educate the property owner, so we're a little worried about that. So we started customer service surveys. We started these 2 years ago, and this makes sure that both the customer service reps on the front end as well as the appraisers are being very professional in the way they're dealing with the customer, also explaining the process clearly, so they're not being too fast. I don't want them to just rush them out. I want them to actually go through and explain the process. I'm really proud on these. We're getting scores anywhere from about 94 to 99% satisfaction rate on our customer service surveys. And it's not that we're only handing them to the ones that are happy, trust me. We are handing them out to every single person that comes in. When you get checked in at the lobby earlier when I was showing you that, you get a customer service survey. So you can actually rate the customer service rep as well as the appraiser on their performance. So we're doing real well both in efficiency as well as our customer service. All right, what you really called me out here for, statistical information. This is basically what happened in the community. I've specifically pulled up City of Hutto information here so you can see that. We'll be able to compare it. I'll compare it just verbally with some of what's happening in the county as well. So without further ado, let's get into these numbers. I mentioned a while ago that the market is kind of turning around. This is one of the first indicators that we look at to see if the market's turning around or not. This is new subdivision lots per year by city, and this is new subdivision lots per year by ISD. And I want to point out one figure here. This is the total for the county. 2,900 lots this year were filed, this past year. In the past 2 years, 2010 and 2011 valuation season, 1,600 and 1,900 were filed. It is picking back up. When developers go out there and they start to put lots on the ground that are ready for a home on it, they don't do that until they're ready. They're not going to, spend the money and effort to go out and put developed lots out there without knowing that there's a market for a home that's going to be on that. And so you can see that we are down from 08 and 09 where we were around 5,000, but it's definitely better than the last 2 years. It's a real positive indicator for us that the market's turning around. The other thing, sure.
Can you break out Hutto in there?
I do. I've got School District Hutto and City of Hutto. City of Hutto, we are down just slightly from last year, 62 to 33. It's not quite picked up. I think the inventory of lots is still, quite high in Hutto. But as a county, since you're seeing that growth, it's going to influence Hutto as well. And then School District Hutto is about the same, 64 and 38, 2011 and 2012. I've got handouts actually that are out here. I didn't mention that a while ago. If you wanted to follow along, they're kind of small, but you should be able to make notes on that as well. You're welcome. This is estimated foreclosure statistics. Nobody tracks this, okay? So this is our best guess is what's going on with foreclosures. And the way we do this is looking at substitute trustees' deeds that are filed at the county clerk's office, most of which are foreclosures. So I'll put that caveat at the very front. This is not actual foreclosures, but this is the best we can get. What we've noticed is the number of these trustees' deeds that are filed has actually dropped off this past year, which is very good. Foreclosures have been a problem. I know in particular in this area we've had a high number of foreclosures, so we want to see this start to turn around. And if you can see as a percentage of the total deeds, so we've got total documents filed at the county clerk's office. These are going to be all your ownership changes. Then you have the number of trustees' deeds filed, and then you have the percentage of trustees' deeds that were filed. Okay? So as a percentage, you can see back in 05 through 07, I mean, we were around 3 to 4%. There was very little foreclosures filed in the county. But now, in the past few years, 8 through 10, it was up around 5 to a high of 9%. So it was definitely a lot higher than what we were experiencing back then. Well, that has dropped off now to about a little over 6.25%. So we're actually doing pretty well. This is a really positive sign for us to know that we have more lots going on the ground. We also have less foreclosures out there. It just tells me that the market is kind of on the cusp of starting to pop back up. We've seen a lot of, I'll get into some stats here in a minute that shows that the market's been kind of level for a while. I'm happy to see this, that you should see some growth over these next couple of years based on these stats. So this is the next few slides are going to be general overview of the property count, value breakdown by different categories. I'm going to go through these rather quickly. I don't want to bore you with too many statistics, but to get to the final value, what's happened out here. You may remember some of these slides from last year. These are updated with new information. If you were here last year, this is this year's information. And this is based on the City of Hutto. I've done it for the county and several other entities out there as well. This is City of Hutto real property by value %. This just breaks it down into the different categories of property that are out there. Hutto is about 81% roughly by value residential. Okay. The county is much less by percentage as far as value is concerned. It's around 50%, I believe, by value. But if you look at by count, Hutto is absolutely a residential community. I mean, we have way more count of residential properties than we do the other types of properties, commercial and multifamily. This is City of Hutto residential value, and this is in millions. As you can see, because of growth, not because of existing properties, but because of growth in new properties, this has actually ticked up almost every year. It's not quite the level you were seeing from 07 to 08 as you see this large growth here, but it has ticked up a little bit every year, even the current year. So We do have more value. What I can tell you is this is preliminary value. This is at the time we send out notices. So this would have been on April 2nd when we sent out all the residential notices. This is what the value was showing you. As you may remember, we have a protest season. And when people come in and protest their properties, some of those get lowered. And so that will cause this number to shrink slightly. So just keep that in mind in the future slides that you're going to see. This is the Hutto average residential home value. You can see that we had a heyday in values of 09, dropped off in 10, dropped off again in 11, and it's about the same, within about $1,000 of the 2011 average home value for 2012.
Would that be maybe due to the cost, material costs, or lack of sales and then trying to push it up, driving the prices down? What would cause that?
Well, it depends on the inventory that is sold, okay, and our values that are out there. So what this is the average value that we've placed on the home, and those values are placed on those homes based on the sales in their immediate neighborhood. Okay, so Lakeside Estates. Lakeside Estates, we're going to look at the homes that have sold within Lakeside Estates, and we're going to move values up or down in those amongst those homes. Okay, so those sales are what indicate that market value. As far as the cost to construct numbers have been going up slightly, not much, about what 2 to 3% I think is what we've been seeing in the materials cost. But that's only a component of the value. We do a cost approach to look at the cost it took to construct the home, and then we move that value up or down based on what the market transactions are. So as sales occur, we look at all the sales, and then we determine whether or not our value we've placed on them is correct. If it's not, we'll move it down or up based on the sales we're seeing out there.
Well, for $10,000 in 1 year, it seemed like a gross fluctuation.
It was a big fluctuation, and we saw not this drastic of a drop in most communities throughout the county, but we did see a drop from 10 to 11. You know, there was a drop countywide, and this was the economy mainly that did a lot of this.
Yeah,
the economy.
Related to a lot of the foreclosures and the short sales of the summer?
Absolutely. I think there's no doubt. I think Hutto as a percentage at one point, going off of memory here, but it was somewhere around 18 to 19% of the transactions were foreclosures in Hutto. And so when you have 1 out of every 5 transactions that is a foreclosure, you have people looking at the prices that are paid on those foreclosures and saying, would I rather buy a home at market value from an individual or from a builder, or would I go in and buy this one that's somebody just left the keys on the lawn and left? You know, I mean, a lot of times they're going to go with the foreclosure, and those generally sell a little bit less. So those will influence the value of homes.
But hasn't there been a pushback by financial institutions on the government regulation on the foreclosure process? It seemed like it really slowed down tremendously.
It has slowed down. I think that's part of what you're seeing as far as the graph I showed you a while ago on foreclosures. But it was not slow during this year here. Remember, this is 2010. That's 2011. You can see that there hasn't been much of a drop from 2011 to 2012. City of Hutto residential property trends. I don't know if y'all can see that very well back there, but the red line represents properties that decreased by more than 1,000. The blue line represents properties that increased by more than 1,000, and the green line represents those that stayed about the same as last year. And you can see that those that decrease are still up, and those that have increased are still down. About 1,000 residential properties increased, and about 4,000 of them decreased. What I can tell you is they didn't change by much. Okay, percentage-wise, we're talking 1 to 2% on average throughout the county. There was not a whole lot of change. So, though this graph looks like we're decreasing a lot of properties, they're not decreasing by much. And you saw the average a while ago. The average home value has actually dropped off just slightly. So that's just an indicator of what's happening. And this is just a pie graph showing that about 70% of the residential properties in 2012 actually did go down in value by more than 1,000, and about 20% increased by more than 1,000. This is City of Hutto commercial value. Commercial value has actually ticked up, 94 million up to 101 million. Again, at notice time, so this is before protest, so we might see that drop off slightly. We've seen a lot of growth in our apartment sector. I know there's not a whole lot of apartments in this area, but we've seen a lot of growth in that. The reason we have is because it's harder to get into homes. When it's harder to get into homes, you have a lot of people that move into apartment complexes, so their occupancy levels are up. When occupancy levels are up, they get to charge whatever rents they would like. because they're full, right? They can just keep raising rents. So that's enabled multifamily or apartment complexes actually to do very well. We've also seen retail go up. In many cases throughout the county, if you look back over the last 2 years, a lot of the strip centers that were put in were half empty or maybe all the way empty in certain cases. A lot of those are filling up now. That's a real good indicator that commercial retail is actually starting to pick back up. And so, you know, you can just look at the vacancies that are out there and be able to tell what's happening. And retail is one of those sectors that is actually picking up. This is City of Hutto multifamily value. City of Hutto doesn't have, how many apartment complexes you guys have? One? Fourplexes, okay. Apartment complexes is where we've seen the major growth. Duplexes and fourplexes are trending a lot like the residential properties you've seen. So that's why you're seeing that slight drop off here, is because they're trending a lot like residential. Apartment complexes, on the other hand, are trending up quite a bit because of that occupancy level is up quite a bit. City of Hutto commercial property trends. This is basically the same graph I showed you on residential as to what's happening in values. About 155 of them actually increased in value by more than 1,000, very positive sign. And only about, looks like 12, if I read the graph right, decreased in value, and 12 stayed the same. So very, very close as far as the ones that decreased and stayed the same. So the vast majority of commercial properties are going up, or have gone up since last year. 87% of them actually went up. Here's the pie graph.
Let me ask you one thing. How is the higher education center going to influence the property values on 108?
I don't have a slide on that. You know, I've talked with my appraisers to see what they might think on this. We don't have any studies that are going to tell you this, but you know, what you're going to see is synergy that's created by the college being in place. And so with traffic of people going to the college, you're going to see retail start to develop around that area. You'll start to see convenience stores and strip centers around that area. You'll also see that people will be more willing to move to the community because there's a local education option for higher education. So all that will impact the value. I don't have any studies to tell you what the percentages will be because it varies so much depending on the community you're in. I really don't. I can't tell you what will happen, but it will create synergy, as we all know, because there's going to be traffic in that area. Anytime you have traffic, right behind it comes retail because they want to take advantage of the traffic counts that are there.
I guess one of my questions would be, because of that nice facility being established there, is that going to cause you to increase the tax value across the street, so to speak?
Well, what's going to cause us to increase any values is going to be sales transaction or rental information. It won't be just because of the college showing up. We'll have to look at what's happening as far as the rent, you know, if it's commercial property, are rents increasing? With traffic counts, like I said, comes retail, but also comes higher rents generally because they're going to have increased traffic, increased sales, and therefore increased rent paid to the property. So that will increase your values of retail. As far as homes, as long as more people are moving to the area, they're going to start paying more and more value because there's higher demand for those homes. So you'll start to see values trend up. We won't do that until we can see it in the marketplace. We don't do it just because there was something that showed up. This is commercial by category. This is just parcel count. So this just kind of tells you the breakup of commercial types of property you have out there. About 28% office, 28% retail, and your next largest one is your industrial, a lot of the, I'm sure the tradesman loop area and that sort of thing. This is by value. As you can see, retail composes a lot of your value. A lot of the retail that we're right behind here is composing a lot of the value for commercial properties. And this is square footage. This has helped in fire and police, identifying the types of property you have out there, the number of square footage you have. 43% of the commercial square footage is retail. So you got a lot of square footage associated with that. When you know what you have as far as the fire chief is concerned, you also know how to fight it. If it's industrial type properties, chemicals and the like, you're going to have different equipment than you would if it's residential in nature. So this has been helpful too. I know a lot of the ESDs and other fire agencies. All right, this is Hutto total market value in real parcels. The breakout is basically the residential, the red is commercial, and you have your vacant land, and the very top is what multifamily you have. You can see it has gone up slightly on total market value from 2011 to 2012. That's again due to growth, more than likely. City of Hutto total market value, this is just one number, so you can see it a little bit more clear, but you see the little tick up. But again, this is 2012 preliminary value. This is at time of notice, so you're going to see that drop off slightly on market value. All right, this is the number of new residential improvements. This is the leveling that I was telling you was happening for a number of years. This is one of the indicators. You can tell at one point you had 800 homes that were built in the city of Hutto back in 2007. It has dropped off, but it has leveled out. You're not seeing any big drop-offs anymore. What I anticipate, because the number of lots and such that are increasing in the county, some of these lots are going to start filling up with homes. You're going to see increased growth. You'll see more residential improvements. You'll see more commercial improvements. Here's our commercial improvements. Dropped off to a low of 1 in 2011. We have 5 again, so didn't change by much, but it's flattened out, much like the residential has here. It's actually flattened out. Hopefully we'll see that continued growth as well. City of Hutto commercial new improvements. What are you having as far as the percentage of the new improvements that are coming? The 5 that we just showed you, pretty well broken up evenly there, as you can tell. We have retail, service category, which is basically automotive shops, and then and our office space. I think those were office condos, if I remember. Is that correct? All right, so the real question is, what does it mean to taxable value for the city of Hutto, for Hutto ISD, that sort of thing? I've got the city of Hutto graph up here. This is a little bit of a complex graph, but I want to show you what these lines mean. The blue represents existing property value. So what's happened on the existing property value, how much new improvement value you may have had, and then how much the total is going to be. Now this total, taxable value, this is no longer as of notice. Okay? What I've got here is what I estimated the value to be when I certify the roll. As you know, it's going to drop off slightly as we go through the protest cycle. At the end of the protest cycle, you're going to see a value that I will certify to Micah at the City of Hutto, and they will use that, the City Council will use that value to then develop the tax rate. Your existing value went down slightly. That's probably because of the existing home values mainly. You saw that the commercial was up, but the existing home values went down by about $1,000 on average, so you're seeing that go down slightly. We are up, of course we have $21 million worth of new improvement value that's out there. And then I'm estimating after all the protests are done, down maybe a percentage point from last year on the total taxable value. Not much. It may be better than this. I'm very conservative in these estimates, I will tell you, and the reason I do that is because I don't want to tell Micah a false advertisement. Guess what? You're going to have exactly what you had last year, or more than what you had last year. I'm very conservative in what I think we're going to lose over the protest cycle, so he can figure out exactly what that is. I also give the entities 5 years of history of loss. So they can see over the past 5 years, from the time we sent out notices to the time of certification, what's happened on values. So that there's what my projection is for the year. Active protests. These are the protests we've received so far. You may have noticed that your appraisal notice actually came in the mail much earlier this year than it did any other year that you've probably been here. We sent it out April 2nd. Earliest we've been able to send them out. Therefore, our active protests started much sooner. The red line represents active protests for 2012. The orange line was last year. But our deadline for most of our residential improvements this year was May 4th, with the final deadline of May 31st. If you compare to last year, where all the deadlines were set at May 31st, and where we're at now, is nearly even, maybe just a little bit more total than what we had last year. I'm anticipating the level of protest is going to be very close to what we had last year, and therefore your amount of loss should be somewhat similar to what we saw last year in value.
What are they protesting? If 4,000 of our homes went down in value,
yeah, that's right. I wish you were right. I wish that nobody would protest if their home value went down, but that is incorrect. Because usually they come in and they say, my home didn't go down far enough. They still protest whether they go up or down. I will say that protests are down in comparison with when we were increasing market value quite dramatically over the years. But they still do come in and protest.
What do you have any kind of idea what percentage of protests that are influences the established amount?
What percentage of protest? I'm not following the question.
Okay. What percentage of protests are become effective, or that y'all recognize or change?
Going to homeowners favor versus.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
That's all right, no, that's fine. Well, there's multiple processes, as you know. Informally, you meet with a residential, or excuse me, an appraiser. Informally, you meet with an appraiser. At that level, it could vary from year to year. 40% to 50% may get some reduction. Does that mean it went in the owner's favor as far as what the owner thought it was worth? No. That just means we had some reduction. We don't know, we don't track what the owner's opinion of value was versus what our opinion of value was and see if it went down to that opinion. We don't have any way of tracking that. But what I can tell you is about 40 to 50% get some slight reduction.
Okay.
When it goes on to ARB, we don't have those statistics to give you. Appraisal Review Board then sees the ones that they can agree at the informal level, and it's somewhere around that, I would imagine, because it's another group of citizens that are actually looking at the value and trying to make decisions.
How many actually make it to the ARB board?
Usually 3,000 to 4,000 will go to the ARB out of the 15,000 that we have. We have about 12 to 13% of our properties that protest every year, and of those, it's 3,000 to 4,000 actually will make it to the ARB. All right, this is what we work on every year. When we actually send out the roll, we're at 100% unprotested, right? Because we just sent it out. We sent out notices, nobody's had an opportunity to protest. Well, the law requires us to be by July 20th at 95% by value unprotested. So as people protest their accounts, you'll see this graph drop off as they protest accounts. We get down to about 77 to 80% in the way of the number of protests by value that we have, our percentage of protests by value we have. And what we like to see is this line actually climb very quickly, because that enables us to get a certified roll out to our taxing units at 95% unprotested. So as we work off protests, it brings that percentage level back up. Well, as you can see, we started much earlier this year. So what we're hoping to see is that this line will level off until the May 31st deadline. It'll drop off when all the commercial properties are entered at the end of the protest deadline. And then hopefully, instead of being more like a U like you're seeing here, you'll start to see this more like a V, and we'll be able to let that value climb much quicker so we can get it in the hands of our taxing units. We won't certify earlier, but we may certify at a higher value. The reason we don't certify earlier is the fact that when we certify, it causes double work on our end, because we have to put the value in for the current year and the future year in order to get the value entered in our system. So what we will, in past 3 years, Michael, we've certified to you 3 days, roughly early, 3 to 4 days early, I think is what we've been at. So we try to get it out to you as early as possible. I would imagine instead of being around 95% for most entities, we're going to be somewhat higher than that this year, because hopefully what I'm anticipating here will happen. So that is the last slide. I apologize if I took too long, but here to answer any questions that you have. Yes, sir.
You still have to protest your appraisal to find out what properties are being appraised?
Unfortunately, yes. I actually talked to our legislative chair. We have a state organization that actually will go down and talk to the legislatures about different items that should be changed. One of those we strongly believe should be changed is that you should be able to have access to sales information before you protest the account. That just makes total sense to me. Why are they making you protest to come in and get sales information? We should be able to send that out with a notice. In fact, Kansas, I was just talking to a chief appraiser from the Kansas area. When they send out the notice of valuation, it includes the sales that they use to value that home. Don't you think that makes a lot of sense? So when you get the value and go, oh, here's all the sales that they had. So I would imagine that's going to prevent a lot of protests, because you already got the information in hand. So I'm really hoping to get that changed. I'm not making any promises, but we will try again this next year to do that.
I protested mine a few years ago. My house is being appraised against a house in Georgetown, Parkland. That's not Hutto.
Yeah, are you in a rural home? Or? I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
I live right in Hutto.
In downtown Hutto? Is it an old home?
Yes.
Yeah, it's the old homes that makes it a little bit more difficult. And let me talk about on that in a minute. If you're in a homogeneous or tract home neighborhood, very easy to find comparables usually, because there's a number of homes there that are very similar to each other, and there's usually lots of sales. I guess the more rare your home type is, the harder it is to find comparables, and they have to go outside of the area generally to find those comparables. That happens on rural homes when you're on acreage and they're built in various years. It also happens on downtown homes. usually that are, prior to, say, 1970 year built. If you look at the total, I don't have the graph, but on another slide presentation I have, the growth in Williamson County since 1970, it's like over 1,000%. I mean, there's just so many more homes later year built than they are prior to 1970. So if you're looking for homes that are comparable to yours, your pie just got very small. There's not a whole lot to choose from.
But on the other side of it, if you go to sell your house, your realtor's not going to look at that kind of area. They're going to look at something more closer to your house.
Well, it all depends on the type of home. It all depends on the type of home. Our accuracy on those homes, admittedly, is not as good as those that are in a tract home neighborhood, but we have been fairly accurate even going outside of the area to get good comparable sales. So, and then again, even if we don't have any that are right next door to you because there's such a limited supply, we have to be able to trend those values. We can't just leave your value at what it was as time goes by, and we know everything around you is going up, right? And we can't leave you down here. You're going to be paying an unfair valuation, unfair taxes. So we trend it with other older homes that are throughout the county to try to figure out what's happening on value of those type of homes. So it is a difficult task. I admit it's a difficult task on those older homes. The more unique the property, the more difficult it is to appraise. Yes, sir.
I live in a subdivision where what you said is true. Most of the houses were built by the same builder, many had the same plan, and actually every odd year I monitor my street.
Sure.
And I did have a situation where I suspected a neighbor was building, well, I knew they were building one in my park. And from the street it appeared to be a garage and a workshop. So I was curious about how long it would take me to pick up on. I actually knew how much was being owned. And if I recall, it took the first year, it was not caught. The next year, you caught it. And I don't know if you remember or not, I unnerved your office staff by saying I wanted to see you. They gave me a suspicious look. I said, I want to compliment him on catching this.
I think I do remember that actually.
You gave me a lesson on the appraisal. You also explained to me a house that was the show home, which sold me my house, was a price appraised a few dollars, maybe a couple thousand less than mine. That didn't seem fair to me, but then you showed me your criteria, and my house indeed was newer than his. So I'm not encouraging people to go see you, but I do think, and I was very interested in how you caught this guy. And I had another neighbor I hope he touched because he was making a second story.
Well, permits is part of it, so if they had a permit out, we're going to be able to identify those, but we also use aerial photography, as I showed you earlier. We have lots of aerial photography as well. So you'll see it on those as well. So, any other questions?
The total taxable value slide that you have, is that City of Hutto or Hutto ISD? Or
City of Hutto.
Okay.
It was City of Hutto.
Comparison for Hutto ISD.
Did we do one for Hutto ISD? Do you recall?
There were one of those that came in immediately.
What we do have from Hutto ISD is the certified estimate that I send out. I sent that out, let's see, last week of April. And so you can actually get that. It's also, I don't know that it's on our website yet, but it will be. So you might get it off our website, but I know you can go to the Hutto ISD and get the actual certified estimate. It'll have it on. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
It's my strategy to go in and protest and say that all the other houses are in my weekend and I'm in a house in the neighborhood.
The question was if a house is built by a different builder and the house that we're comparing against are built by a different builder, will it help me to say, hey, my appraisal is based on those and it's, they're not the same? It all depends on the neighborhood. And the reason I say that is because if the homes are very similar construction and we cannot see that there's any difference in the way they're selling, it won't make a difference. Now, there are some absolutely that sell differently. We've seen it where you have one block, and on that block you might have 3 different builders, and those 3 builders are building 3 different grades of homes. And so we might actually, what we call market area, your home with the ones of your builder. So you might actually have 3 market areas on the same block because we're seeing it sell differently. But over time, we've seen neighborhood after neighborhood. Over time, it just blends because those that built, that bought the lower end homes will generally remodel those, And those that bought higher-end homes, that they maintain, the average one, it all just kind of pulls to the middle. Those ones that bought the higher-end homes, they kind of depreciate a little bit, come to the middle, and the ones that bought the lower-end homes will remodel them and they pull to the middle. So over time, we end up seeing that they all just sell a lot. But generally, at the very beginning, if we can identify that there's a difference in builders, we will put that in the appraisal itself. Any other questions? All right. Well, I always enjoy coming out. Thank you for having me again, and we'll see you next year.